What is going on, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another episode of the Kingdom Says. I am your host, as always, Garrett Williams. Tonight we've got another full barn in the building, talking more prospects. Today we've got tight ends on the board, and it's a decent little tight end class. Joining us, as always, Mr. Arrowhead Tom at the top right of the screen. How you doing, Tom?
Not as always. I've apparently been promoted over Kyle. I guess this feels weird. I'm not used to being the first introduction.
I mentioned that 15 minutes ago, and nothing happened. So we're just rolling with it. No, it was right after. It was literally the sentence after my camera stopped working.
Over there, doing that hoopla.
Easy. I'm good. Enjoying my new position of power. Ready to talk about some tight ends and some names that are tight. Let's do it.
Nice. Good to hear it. Also joining us, of course, as always, Randy Ellenberger in the bottom right of the screen. How you doing tonight, Randy?
I'm doing awesome. Just another fun-filled and exciting night with you fellas. Talking about a position that I really like as a former tight ends coach. Super versatile players. This position is always evolving and changing and becoming more and more important, and it's a position of importance for us coming up in the near future. So, yeah, we're gonna find some gems in here.
Heck yeah, we are. And of course, last but not least, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Kyle Henning. How are you, Kyle?
Oh, doing all right. Been a busy week. Lots of things going on. Ready to discuss a deep but interesting tight end class, I guess, is the way I would go with that. So, ready to talk some ball.
Ready to talk some ball. Tight ends on the board in the building, I should say. And like Randy said, we have a little bit of a need for tight end coming up here pretty soon. As we all know, Travis Kelce coming back for another season. What is probably going to be his last season, it seems like. After mulling retirements for the past couple years now, it seems like he's kind of locked in for one last ride, barring, I don't know. He's Kelce might never retire, honestly, just because he's so. I mean, he's still he still looks good. I mean, he's still athletic. He can still make plays. Now, obviously, being a 36-year-old tight end, like you just can't. He's not the same as he used to be, but you can't run most of the offense through him like you used to be able to do. But
he had 800 and something yards last year, guys.
Exactly. Yeah, he's still putting up some good numbers.
He still had almost 100 catches.
He doesn't look like he's necessarily fallen off a great cliff.
Several of those were without Mahomes, and we know who was playing quarterback after that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, although tight end right now in this day and age, in this immediate year, might not be the most necessary because Travis Kelce is still here, you also don't have a lot behind Travis Kelce, both now and in the future. So if you kind of evaluate the Chiefs roster right now, we still have Noah Gray, right, who last year was invisible. The years before that, we thought, oh, this might be a guy that can be a solid tight end too for you. Last year, don't know necessarily what happened, but he did not make that same impact that he had in the trajectory which maybe just as an offense as a whole was kind of down, which was not good. But you got Noah, you have Jared Wiley, who was kind of he was a third rounder a couple years ago that we really didn't even see much of last year either. Jake Brinstool is still there, so it's not the most intriguing tight end room behind him. Tom, what do you think about the Chiefs' priorities should be at tight end?
Yeah, I mean, I think like some other positions on the roster, it's a need, but probably some bigger needs. I know everybody's just shat on Noah Gray all last year. First of all, our whole offense looked like trash. And also, he looked like there was the catch that he got knocked out on. He just didn't look the same after that. I mean, anybody who's had a concussion, especially a concussion in football, will tell you it's hard to come back from that. And I don't think Noah Gray is a guy that I want to be my primary starter or whatever. But he's a solid, like he's a good tight end, right? Last year, not to give them a pass, but the context of the entire offense struggling, right? Like, it's not. I don't know. People have just been super, super down on Noah Gray after 1 year compared to what he has been for the team. Especially for a guy who was a 5th or 6th round pick. So Jared Wiley is another one. I think he's been. Tight ends are a hard position, man, because it's one of the hardest positions to translate to the NFL. Scouts are very upset about tight ends, but it's one of the hardest positions to transition to the NFL, like and make an immediate impact. The last couple guys we've seen, like these rookies, um, Brock Bowers and oh goodness, the two kids last year, Colston
Warren and
and
Lovely.
Tyler Warren. Like those are anomalies. Those are not the typical situation.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, like I said, it was the offense as a whole was kind of down last year. And there was a lot of different circumstances, especially like Jared Wiley, how we didn't really see much of him after coming off the ACL injury a year before, kind of gave another almost redshirt year. So, we'll see. Also, I think Noah Gray is going into, I think this is the last year of his contract, or it's coming up. So that's another factor. So either way, I think the future of the Chiefs tight ends position is a little bleak, and I think we'll survive this year without any super major additions if they don't feel like that's a need. But going forward, once Kelsey inevitably retires, and whatever happens with Noah Gray, like you're gonna need someone else and you're not gonna replace what Kelsey was ever, right? Like unless you're drafting one of these freak prospects in like a top 15 pick or something like that, and even which Kelsey wasn't, which is even more impressive of how he's developed into one of the greatest, if not the greatest tight end of all time. Like you can't replace that with just one guy necessarily, but to hopefully get production out of that position going forward, obviously a position that Andy Reid has always prioritized in his offense. We will see how big of an investment that they choose to use or choose to kind of go with in tight ends this year. So, I think with that being said, I think we should just get into some prospects. If you guys are ready, talk about some. There's a lot of prospects in this class. We mentioned it's kind of a deep class. I know Tom thinks it's a deep class. Tight ends are one of those things you never really expect there to be a lot of guys, but this definitely feels like a class that's has a lot of versatility in those later rounds. A lot of guys who could definitely stick around on NFL rosters for a good amount of time, Kyle.
Yeah. To the point of the locker room currently, you want to raise the floor, and I think there's some guys that could potentially push to raise the floor and maybe, take somebody's job, to give an Isaiah Pacheco quote from a few years back. So, look, I don't know that I would particularly say there's a star in this class. There's a couple of guys that are probably going to be really good, and one or two that might be able to be great. But there are a bunch of guys that are going to be in the league for a while. They're going to play 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Maybe not be the number one tight end on any roster, but be a solid 2, mix it up, tight end, whatever you need to do. And there's some pick your type of your tight ends in this class. There's some guys that are better blockers, obviously. There are some guys that are some better receivers. There's a lot of hybrid guys that are going to be able to do both at least a little bit for you. But there's a lot of, like I said, safer, I guess, higher floor, maybe not the highest ceiling in the world tight ends in this class, especially after the first few options. But it's an interesting class because I think you definitely, like you mentioned with the room, you want to upgrade that floor in that room because, yes, Noah had one bad year. However, he's now had a bad year, so we want to make sure that if he still continues to have another bad year, you have something in place, maybe a little more secure than what you've got there right now, which you mentioned Jared Wiley, and yes, Mr. Brenningstool, Mr. BYU tight end, Mr. Brenningstool, I believe, will probably play special teams for another 5 years with his team. So that's just the way these things work. We know how this is at this point. But no, with that, I mean, I'm interested. There's lots of guys. I don't know where everybody wants to start. I assume there's like 3 names for the top 3 of these, but I guess we should probably let the draft experts kick us off.
Oh, we're experts now. That's
expertism.
I'm flattered. but that was That was kind of a very good way to put this to put this tight end class as the the high floor, low ceiling, with the exception, I think, of a very select few. There are a few of these guys that do a few things really well and not some other things very well, and kind of vice versa. But I mean, everyone knows, the number one overall ranked tight end in this class is Kenyon Sadiq, and that's not. I don't think that's going to vary from anyone's evaluation or anyone's list.
Right.
He's
that dude's freaky.
Yeah, he's an athletic freak. Just a tad bit undersized, for a typical NFL tight end standard. He's 6'3", 241, but runs like a gazelle.
Put him on the Kelvin Benjamin diet for like a year or something and see what happens.
Right? Yeah, he ran a 4.39 at the 40.
Something like that.
And you look at him and he's like chiseled out of granite. Like he's a physical specimen, just a tad undersized just by NFL standards. But that really does allow him, to maybe primarily take that H-back type, super versatile, put him anywhere on the field type role. I think he does block a little bit better at the point of attack when he's able to move and pin down with a double team than it is more one-on-one type and try to move people. But that's just because of his size and his ability and really the offense they run at Oregon. Like they don't really ask him to be an attached Y and take on edges all by himself all the time. That's just not their MO. But
not Oregon football. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, 51 catches, 560 yard, 8 touchdowns. When you hear people talk about Sadiq in the way they do, you would imagine those numbers to be higher. I mean, really, they're average. They're average numbers statistically. But that's just another thing with Oregon too, spreading the ball around.
I was gonna say Oregon's got a lot of weaponry.
Yeah, when you've got a lot of weapons,
they have a few choices to pick from.
Exactly. So and so those. Saying his stats are pedestrian is not really a knock on him. It's just one of those Oregon things as well. So, but with all that being said, Sadiq's a stud. Would I love to see him in Kansas City? Sure, absolutely. I think Andy Reid could have a ton of fun with a chess piece like that. Now, with also that being said, I'm not taking Kenyon Sadiq at 9. Okay, no. We have much higher needs on this roster at 9. If he's there at 29, different story. Okay, then we can maybe start having that conversation. But he's definitely not a person, if he's sitting there at 17, 18, 19, 20, that I'm going to start getting that itchy trigger finger to trade up for as well. I don't think he's that either. So a really good player, would be a fun chess piece for Andy to have. I don't see him falling to 29, and he's not worth 9. So even though Mr. Mel Kiper decided that's who to take. I mean,
that was kind of a draft. Early on in the draft process. It was kind of a more popular.
No, he came out
at 9. Right.
Yeah, he came out with one this week. I'm going to chime in just because this is where I'll get spicy. I'm not sold on Sadiq like everybody else. Is he an absolute physical alien? Sure, yes he is. I actually was surprised at his engagement in blocking. I didn't think he moved people very well. I think he relies a lot on just being stronger and faster than most people at the college level. I didn't see him as an undeniable weapon in the pass game. I thought they asked him to do some pretty simple things, curls, corners, not a lot of and a little bit's hard when you're watching tight end because we've watched Travis Kelce for so long, and he does it differently than anybody else. But Kenyon doesn't have the same understanding of spacing and leverage. I think he's got good hands, tracks the ball okay, but sometimes if it's a high and he's tough. I don't think he's in the. People talk about him as the same kind of caliber as the Tyler Warren and the Colson. I don't think he's there. I think he's a lot of projection. I think he gets the benefit of being the athletic freak, and that just gets multiplied. I think he is a better player in Madden than he will be in real life.
Probably that.
You know,
He's going to be a
just
crazy Madden player with the different ratings. Yeah.
People talk about the Vernon Davis comp, right? Like that's because athletically, but Vernon Davis was
freak,
and it took Vernon Davis a couple years to figure it out as a pro, and even then they had to get creative with the off. I know that Sanford, but still, you're not you know if you are looking for somebody to come in and contribute day one. I don't know how much Sadiq is going to give you. Could he end up being the best tight end in this class, by year 5? Sure. Could he also end up being in a weird, like, really athletic, but doesn't really give you? Could he be? Who was the guy that played for Tampa Bay for the longest time? OJ Howard. Could he be the next OJ Howard?
Yeah.
Solid, muscular guy who occasionally makes a play, but I don't see him. I don't see him impacting defenses or pulling the weight of defensive attention the way that some other premier tight ends do. I wouldn't. He wouldn't be the first tight end on my board, but it's hard for me to rank him otherwise because he seems to be such a unanimous player that way, and I'm not trying to be different just for the sake of being different. If you're asking me who do I think has the best chance of being the best a top 10 tight end in this league by the end of their rookie contract, I am going with Eli Stowers, who's probably the number 2 guy for most people. So
yeah, it seems like the consensus is that Sadiq is pretty much the first guy, and really it seems like the only person that's consistently being a potential first round pick. It doesn't seem like, Stowers is kind of getting a little bit of love and maybe could sneak into the end, but Sadiq seems to be the universal guy that will probably be that in that 15 to 25 range. It seems like of a guy that can kind of goes a little bit earlier in the draft. To me, he reminded me of Harold Fannin Jr. from last year.
I was just going to bring that up.
There's a lot of, and Harold Fannin was a super fun prospect to watch too, but he was fun because he was like a 3rd, 4th round prospect. This is a little bit different spending a first round pick on this guy, and I do think relating to Kansas City, I don't know how much he's necessarily impacting you. Day one with the amount of, especially if you're drafting him, obviously you're not doing it at 9. I think we're all pretty on board and not drafting him at 9. But even if you're trading up halfway into the first round or so, I just don't know if that's worth it for a guy like that. And I don't think he's going to fall to 29 either. So as much as the prospects is kind of fun, and I don't think Andy would not use him, but I don't know if that needs to be the priority with his skill set. How much future projections that really gives you.
So, quickly to Tom's point, I understand why you have concerns, Tom, because I watch him and I'm like, you should, as ridiculous of an athlete as you are, you should be dominating slightly more than you have. And I agree with the simple route things. I think he's got some significant room to improve as far as his zone coverage understanding and how to settle into some of those and where to find those spots. But I do also think he's going to be an absolute nightmare to try to cover with a linebacker or safety because they're just not going to be able to do it if you're playing man coverage. So I can see both sides. I understand why you wouldn't necessarily have him 1 on your board. I do think his frame and his if he can put 10 pounds on and not lose any athleticism, I think this changes a lot of a conversation because he's going to get pushed around some, especially if he's in line. You're going to have to use him more out and about and around. So I like him. I just don't know that I like, and I definitely don't like him at 9.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's that he needs to put on that weight or get stronger. He's built like a Greek god. Like he is. He's got the strength.
I'm not saying. I know.
He doesn't try. It's a technique and effort thing almost. And I don't know if effort's the fair. It's again, I see a guy who's probably always been bigger and faster and stronger than everybody else around him, and he just leans on that. And if there's one thing I've learned is that those players can be a really tough transition to the NFL for those guys because you're not the biggest, fastest, strongest, and to the like. It's not just that he's not that, productive for us. I don't. When you watch like because you can take production can be hampered because like again I'll use the example of Travis Kelsey. When you watch the top down view of Travis Kelsey running a route, you can see how the defense is bracketing and accounting for. They defenses didn't have to do that same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sadiq doesn't have the same gravity as a real playmaker to me.
Right, that's why I said dominant. I wasn't really necessarily even talking about like big numbers, but he doesn't make you defend. For as ridiculous of an athlete as he is, he should threaten a defense more than he seemed to threaten the defense. They just seem to be like, yeah, you're a freak, but that's fine, and then move on. As opposed to, like you mentioned with Travis, where it's like, oh, we should probably rotate 2/3 of the defense to pay attention to that guy. You at the college level, especially being that kind of athlete, you want to see a little more of that dominant force, even if he's not necessarily getting the yards. But if he's the dominant force and it's resulting in other guys running wide open because the whole defense is looking at him, you can still see where that's a benefit. I didn't see that as much watching him as I wanted to, as ridiculous of an athlete as he is. And don't get me wrong, he is a ridiculous athlete.
I mean, he's an alright athlete. I can't really watching his film. Not really like super wowed. I mean, yeah, he's probably going to be good, but I just didn't see compared to even some of the top prospects like last year, like Warren and Loveland, and even many former tight end prospects. Like I don't know. He doesn't necessarily wow me. I could see him being a productive guy, but not necessarily someone that really moves the needle as far as tight ends go for me. So although all that being said, he is the only kind of consensus first round guy, which is fair because I think he can come in and contribute to a team immediately. It's just a matter of the long-term projections. Some of these next guys on the list, I think maybe a little more stereotypical builds of tight ends and a little more, different flavors for sure, but more of what maybe the Chiefs would maybe be looking for and need, especially, not at 29 probably, but these are guys in the 40-ish range. I mean, early second to late second, early third round, maybe that can kind of fall into it. So I'm going to give 3 names here real quick. Eli Stowers, Oscar Delp, and Max Clare. So 3 guys that kind of, I think Stowers, as we kind of discussed, he's the next guy on many people's board, including Tom. He's their first guy on your board. A little bit more of a, I mean, he's still kind of undersized, right? 6'4", 240. He's not really the biggest. He's a little bit bigger than Sadiq is, but a little more. I feel like he plays a little more, like I said, traditional. He's a little bit more of a pass catching tight end. Tom, what do you see in Stowers and so what do you see in Stowers and then that next tier of guys? How does he kind of compare?
Yeah, so stop me when you've heard this before. Eli Stowers, former quarterback. Yeah, so it's actually a really interesting story. And this is another thing that when we talk about the 2 players, Stowers was more productive with a lot less talent around him. I mean, his quarterback was a lawn gnome, respectfully. But it's interesting because he was with Diego Pavia all the way back to New Mexico State, and he was a guy who used to play quarterback, and then actually, when I think he was at New Mexico State, he logged snaps at quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and tight end. He had a rushing touchdown over receiver, so he's very versatile. He is a skinny, lanky kind of frame guy. I think that there's room for him to build into that, but when I watch him as a route runner, when I watch him as a pass catcher, it's almost like I want to. You got to watch him back to back, right? And you see it differently. The way he kind of moves through defensive coverages and works against zone, the way he can work back to his quarterback when plays break down. I think he's got underrated hands. And his movement skills, right? Nobody's Travis Kelsey, but when you talk about how many times have we watched Travis Kelce catch a 5-yard pass and then do a little wiggle spin, fake juke kind of thing, and then he gets 3, 4, 5 more yards, right? Um, he's got some of that to his game. I think he's can be more physical, in contest and catch stuff, but I think that's something that he's learning. He's only played tight end for 3 years. He's not a slouch as an athlete. In fact, he had a 45.5-inch vertical at the combine, which is wild. When you're 6'4" and you can, yeah. And you see that on
way
tape.
up. That's way up.
Yeah, there's a couple of high point balls where I'm just like, whew. And his frame is like, if you talk about somebody who can put on some weight, the biggest knock on him, they talk about the blocking, and I totally get it because he's thin, and when he is blocked, like he's not going to move a guy. He's not a guy who I think you can say like, that you're going to motion in and let him be your fill, your lead on a block. Like you're not going to do that, but I think he has a better understanding of like angles and blocking. His feet are always moving. Like I don't give people credit for being a willing blocker because you play football. You have to be a willing blocker. But when you, again, compared to like some of the examples where I see Sadiq, who just comes in and muscles a guy and his feet are a little bit slow, like I think you can see a player who has worked really hard to learn the position, and even though it's not the blocking isn't the result isn't always the best outcome. I think the process for him is cleaner, and if he could get a little bit stronger, keep growing, I think he has a ton of upside. Also, I forget the name of the award, but it's a scholastic award. They call it the Academic Heisman, and Eli Stowers was the recipient of that. Like just an incredibly smart kid, incredibly. I think if you don't have him in a class with Kenyon Sadiq, you're going, wow, this guy's really athletic for who he is. Like, didn't run a crazy stupid 40 time, but was a 4.51. Like, I've been looking at so many 40 times. I'm like, how many? It was a solid, 4.51 with a 1.5 split. The broad and the vertical are huge. He's gotta get a little bit more mass on him, and I think just being, if you talk about a guy who, like, if you want a true playmaking kind of guy, I think the guy to mind is Mike Gesicki. I think he can be maybe a very similar player to him.
Not bad. That's not bad. Randy, I know. Oh, actually, go ahead, Kyle, on Stowers.
No, you're good. Yeah, I mean, he creates problems because they, at least at Vanderbilt, he lined up everywhere, and I mean everywhere, in out wide, in line, slot, H back, like everywhere. Yeah. I think the other thing, Tom, that you mentioned and I think I heard you mention that he was a former quarterback. When I was just talking about Sadiq and his room to improve with the understanding of where to attack zones with his routes and some of those things, Stowers has almost more naturally because he's a former quarterback, like the guy you mentioned, that he is not. That wouldn't be nice to ask him to replace Travis, but same concept. Former quarterback in high school, understands defenses from a quarterback perspective, so he identifies them a lot quicker in route, in coverage. He's not a bad athlete. He's still going to cause problems for safeties and linebackers. He creates mismatches a little differently than Sadiq does because Sadiq is a tiny bit more athletic from a speed perspective, I would say. But he's going to be a really good tight end for somebody that they're going to get late first, early second type pick on to take on, and he's in the running for the top tight end in this class for sure, right off the bat. So,
yeah, for sure. I mean, he is a talented athlete, and and like Tom said, like the biggest knock is in his blocking. But again, at Vanderbilt, not necessarily what they asked him to do, and his stats do look a little bit better because he was kind of one of the bigger targets that Vanderbilt had. So, I mean, the 62 catches for just a shade, 769 yards that's not bad statistically. One thing I really like about Eli is that he looks natural and fluid in his movements, especially in the receiving game. Like he has just a natural the way he moves in and out of his routes, how he flashes his hands when he's trying to catch a ball. Like he's got good solid soft hands. So I mean he is just a pass catching threat, not necessarily again an attached wide type tight end. He can move around. He can move around the offense like a Travis can, or some of those more versatile type tight ends. But yeah, there are definitely some things to work on, but there's a lot of things to really like about Eli, and I think we pretty much covered all of them. So
he also won the Mackey Award this year.
Yeah,
which is the tight end award.
Yep.
Yeah, Mackey also the Campbell Award I think was the other one Tom was talking about. So yeah, good kid yes. For sure. And I think a guy that if he was there at 40 and you felt, I don't know, at 40 specifically, I think there's a lot of intriguing options for the Chiefs, but I would probably be the soonest that you could get him because I don't think I would see him lasting until 74, like maybe these other two on the list, which are Oscar Delp and Max Clare. Randy, I know you're a big Oscar Delp guy, and Tom, I know you're a big Max Clare guy. So now all of a sudden we got a battle for the third tight end spot here. What's kind of the differences between the two, and how do they kind of stack up in this tight end class?
Yeah, like these three dudes are very, in my mind, very closely rated. I seem to be a little higher on Oscar Delp than most, and a lot of people will gravitate towards the lack of statistical numbers. He only had 20 catches for 261 yards and a touchdown. So super underutilized at Georgia, in my opinion. And, but he had some guys to sit behind and patiently wait his turn, behind Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers. And then it was his turn to be the dude. So I don't think Georgia did him any favors in making him a focal point or trying to feed him the ball. Probably could have been a little more productive as a team had they focused on him a little bit in some aspects. But he's 6'5", in that 250 range. He ran in that 4.5 range as well. So he's a bigger athletic, more of that prototypical size that we're looking in that that 6'5" to 6'6" range, that 250 to 260 range. So he's got that body type, and Georgia football is, it's big boy SEC football, and they run a pro style offense. So you're going to see more of him attached as a typical Y. So you're going to see his ability to block. So I think he's a little bit more polished. I guess I would say in that respect, he's a little bit more well-rounded. He's not just a pass catcher. He's not just kind of that gadgety, put him out in the slot and line him up in different places. He can play the traditional Y position, which is something I really like. And I like the way Georgia guys play football. It's they're just a little rougher, a little tougher. They have a little bit more attitude. They're through the SEC grind. So yeah, I think I'm a little higher on Oscar Delp, even though the production statistically was not there. But I think he's a versatile, well-rounded tight end that really has some upside that I think once he gets into the NFL and gets a little bit of time under his belt there too, he can really come in and be a really solid number 2, and then push to be a pretty solid 1 within a few years. So.
I like Delp's game. Yeah. I do. Tom, what do you think? What about Clare? What about Max Clare?
Yeah, I will say I do like Oscar Delp. I think he's somebody who stands out as a blocker. Just plays with not always the cleanest, but just violent, aggressive. I think what I can say about Oscar Delp and Max Clare they have in common is that neither of them is a finished product, and that they both probably are a year away from giving them real starting stats, and probably 2 years from being the guy at least. Max Clare is early on in the season, I was working through and went back and was watching some of his 2024 tape at Purdue, and like you, it was just it was so good. It was so much fun, and I loved it. I think I even put it in the group chat. I was like, guys, like this Claire kid, we got to take a look at. And then he goes to Ohio State, puts on about 10 pounds. They use him more as a blocker. They ask him to do a little bit more. Um, and obviously not the to the same, to be fair and consistent, right? I just said like, hey, like, if you're the guy, you should be the guy and you should be making plays. And same standard for Kenyon Sadiq as Max Clare. I don't think it's entirely the same because Max Clare was playing with at least two, future first round wide receivers, but wasn't the receiving weapon. Didn't man the ball as much in Ohio State, but he's built like a so 246, 6'4". Like he's built like a more traditional tight end. He's a younger player. I think he has the capacity to be a good blocker. He overshoots a lot. When he gets squared away and gets you like, it's an improvement. But it if you really want a good taste, you got to go back to 2024. Check him out at Purdue. Again, that type of player who is shifty, understands angles, understands zone, understands how to get a couple yards after the catch. I thought he looked very different when he was the focal point and was more productive in that sense. But he didn't. I don't think he lost anything at Ohio State as a receiver. He just didn't have as many opportunities. But I think that there is. I'll say this carefully. He is not Sam Laporta, but I think he is in the mold of that. And if he hits that type of peak, that's the type of player he could be. But he's not there yet, and you have to really clean some things up and hope that he continues to grow and utilize him, give him opportunities to do that.
Right. Both of these guys, Kyle, are more guys I feel like the Chiefs would be interested in, just with the mold of what we typically look for in tight ends, and also they might be in a more comfortable range, like the third, fourth round range that you're not necessarily breaking the bank for the investment, but also you can still get a guy that can contribute within the next year or two.
Yeah, I wouldn't change much about what Tom and Randy said about either guy. As far as they're going to be more in that Delp. I mean, I guess maybe in that third round range. I don't know that Claire makes it all the way there. I think he probably goes in the second, a little later in the second, but it's possible to be in that third round range. They are more traditional style tight ends. They are the bigger, both still plenty good athletically and both good pass catchers. But and that Georgia has had a history of putting out solid tight ends, so that does help Dale in that aspect of a proven place to come out of with a long line of guys in front of you that you've probably been able to pick brains of, former NFL guys and whatnot. So that's good things too.
Yeah. Okay.
Not that Claire was short of that at Ohio State, but
right. Moving on with the prospects going down the list, since we're 38 minutes in here. We're trying to keep a little more pace on this episode, not making. I mean, tight ends. There's a lot of guys to talk about, not as many as wide receiver. But let's keep it moving. Up next, we've got 3 more tight ends for you guys. We've got Michael Trigg, we've got Sam Roush, and we've got what's this guy's first name? I literally just lost it. Jolly. What's his first name?
Justin
Jolly. Yeah. So 2 of these guys, a little bit undersized. Trigg and Jolly, both 6'4", 240-ish, kind of in that same mold. And then Sam Roush, big fella, 6'6", 267. He's a little bit on the bigger side. These are guys I think you could comfortably say, early day 3 prospects probably. So what are we kind of thinking, Tom? What are your opinions on some of these fellas?
Actually, I'm pretty high on Sam Roush. I think he could end up being a day 2 guy. I know that he's not the most natural receiving weapon, and obviously concerned about some of the drop stuff.
That's a nice way to put that, Tom. He's not a
Yeah,
natural receiving weapon.
yes,
Boy, has,
so
he has cinder blocks for hands, but he's not a natural receiving.
Yeah,
That's not nice. He doesn't have cinder blocks for hands. He does have drop issues, and by that I mean significant drops.
I think he has a chance to overcome the drop issue, even though sometimes it was like, what the hell's happening? The rest of his game is clean. And I say that because I think he is very much an Andy Reid like prototype tight end. Big guy, old school. The other thing that's interesting about Sam Roush is his family, like his bloodline is just like he's the great nephew of Merlin Olsen, who's a Hall of Famer, and then it's just like his like two uncles and both played in the NFL. His mom was a competitive volleyball. I mean, like there's just athleticism all throughout it.
And then you add in those sick glasses he wears with the tape on them, like he's a Hanson brother from a hockey movie. And yeah, man,
he just if nothing else, you bring him in. He's your tight end too, and he's gonna. I think he carves out a 10-year, 12-year career, like just putting people in the dirt.
He's one of those guys I talked about in the Open, where like he could play for multiple years, being the second tight end for pretty much any team, and he's going to be just fine, and you're going to like the guy a lot. He's literally the prototype of one of the guys what I talked about at the beginning of this.
But I do think that he has. Again, I don't think he's not.
Spent some time with the jugs machine.
Yeah, but even beyond that, I think he does offer something to the pass game again, where if he's that second guy and he's got enough juice to him that he's gonna create some mismatches, when he's in those solo coverage. So again, I think I don't know. I'm a sucker for.
I like him the most out of the three.
Yeah, who can put his face mask in your chest and move you around, and I just think that you can. I think he's very coachable. And that goes a long way with potentially unlocking more to his game. And let's also just acknowledge that Stanford team was trash, real trash.
Yeah,
so,
really
bad.
Testing at the combine. Really interesting.
Yeah, out of these three that that we're talking about here, quick, like Roush is by far my favorite. I have him number 5 overall in my rankings for tight ends. But looking at his combine numbers, he's 6'6", he's 270 pounds. I mean, he ran a 4.7, put up 25 reps, a 10.6 broad jump, a 38.5-inch vertical for a kid that size. Like he's got some explosion to his game, and the part that I really like is like he still takes pride. He takes pride in blocking, and that's something that is kind of a lost art for tight ends, because everybody wants to be able to split out and run all the routes and catch all the balls and do the gimmicky gadgety things. And I was like, this kid really likes lining up next to his tackle and double teaming and putting people in the dirt. Like, and to Tom's credit too, like Stanford was not very good.
Why are we being so polite? That team was utter garbage.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to kick a dog when they're down type thing.
What do you have against
Stanford? Well, good thing it's a tree and they suck.
Kyle hates trees.
I mean, he's just one of those. He's one of those fun, old school throwback, prototypical tight ends. The big, strong dude who's going to line up and block real hard, and he's going to catch a few balls here and there. But yeah, he's going to carve out a solid 10-year NFL career, being a solid number 2. And a special teamer potentially in some spots too. So
he'll be on the end of the field goal block as one of the
he'll be
on the field goal.
Field goal for sure. And yeah, I think Roush is one of those guys too who is starting to pick up a little bit of steam as you hear more and more about him in the draft cycle. So.
Very interesting man. Very interesting. He lived in Indonesia at one point.
Super smart. You got to be smart to go to Stanford. So he's going to catch on to the playbook. He's going to do all the things right. And one of those things that I don't think you ever really have to worry about. off field. He just seems like a good kid, smart kid, hard. He's just a good football player. So,
yeah.
The Harvard of the West.
Very different than the other two guys in that kind of category, Justin Jolly and Michael Trigg, who are both a lot more undersized. I feel like very similar to guys that we've already talked about as far as just, kind of more of a receiving build, not necessarily a lot of blocking in their game. I know Trigg is a little bit higher rated of a prospect necessarily, but kind of, I don't know. When I look at some of these guys, these undersized tight ends, unless you're one of these like top tier, dudes like Kenyon Sadiq, like I'm not really interested in the small undersized guy. I don't know how you feel, Kyle.
Trigg would be a lot more intriguing if there weren't question marks.
Intriguing.
He's an athlete. He's explosive. He can do things when he chooses to. And now we've arrived at the problem, which is when he chooses to. He's transferred multiple times. There were multiple reported issues. Got dismissed from Ole Miss. Issues with USC. Got in trouble for undisclosed reasons. And if you get in trouble with Lincoln Riley, you had to do something. And then he goes and got publicly into it because I remember this story with the Baylor AD about. At the time, nobody was really sure, but it turned out it was about a shirt and a brace. Just some maturity question marks, and then the combine, and then whatever that pro day was, which, again, we go back to the effort thing, which, there was none. It's been a very not great draft process for him. Maybe he gets drafted and becomes a baller and all of that doesn't matter. But I will say, if you're going to go do the interview for the job, maybe at least try to interview for the job. I don't know. But again, he's got the profile. He's got a profile. Can be a threat as a weapon. I don't know about his blocking all the time, again, because blocking is a lot of effort-based. But, yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the athlete. I have some questions about how often you're going to get the athlete.
Let me sum up Michael Trigg in a way that Chiefs fans will understand very well. Michael Trigg is Jody Fortson if Jody Fortson was an asshole.
That pretty much covers it. Yeah,
a lot bigger than Trigg was. I mean, Jody was like 6'7".
Was he?
6'5"?
Jody was
6'4".
I think Jody's more athletic, but I
don't think Jody was that big. Was that much taller?
Okay, he's
Jody
6'4",
was 235, and he ran a 4'8".
I mean, Jody was a wide receiver convert. I don't know if that's a necessarily fair comparison.
Tom, I agree with your comp as far as pretty much. Yeah,
he's essentially just a receiving threat. You hope that you can get more, but also I don't. Yeah, the character stuff. Do your homework on it. Hopefully, he's learning to grow, and it's hard. It's hard to judge young men. We were all 21 and made. Well, Garrett.
That was like 6 months ago.
A couple of years ago. Back in the day.
Yeah, I will say, Randy, not to cut you off. Do you have anything to add on Michael Trigg?
No, not really. We pretty much discussed about everything I was going to say about him. Yeah. He does look. When you watch him on film and you're just looking at the pass reps, he does show some flashes. But again, it's almost like. It's like his blocking. Like he shows up for the highlight reel catches and stuff like that. And when it comes to blocking, like he's going to try to show up for like that highlight, try to knock you out type block. Well, he doesn't really have the skill set or the physicality to do that. So he misses a lot. So there's just a lot of super inconsistencies, whether it's on the field or off the field with this kid. So I'm not a fan. So
the highlight cut-ups are ridiculous. The problem is there's a whole lot of other tape besides the highlight cut-ups.
Exactly.
Yeah. let's talk about Justin Jolly for a minute because I kind of love Justin Jolly.
Okay.
I knew you were going to.
If Justin Jolly was 3 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier, yes. But I'm not in the market for another 6'3", 230-pound tight end.
Well,
especially because he's not extraordinarily athletic either.
Right.
Here's the deal: Justin Jolly went to the school of Cameron Irving, celebrations for your teammates.
That is true.
I get it. If we're talking about, the opposite of, Michael Trigg in terms of character and stuff, I get it. He's undersized. I think he's got juice as a pass catcher. I think he's got
he could
athleticism.
be a fantastic fullback. He could be that fantastic fullback H-back guy. That's what he could.
Yeah. Yes. If you're using that way, here it is for me, and this will just be one of those things where I'm always going to respect this, because, and Randy, I think if you're not familiar with this play, you should be, and you will enjoy it. He has a play against Pitt where he gets it's a 59-yard touchdown pass, and he catches it at about the 40, and then about at the 25-yard, 35-yard line, you can see that he tears or tweaks. He strains some muscle. You can see that he pulls it, and my man hop, skips, and bounces his way to the end zone. He doesn't stop. He doesn't lay down.
Greg Jennings.
He pulled the Greg Jennings, and that to me is already you get an extra round in your draft stock for that. Again, we could talk about the physical stuff. If we're talking about a day 3 tight end who I want to kind of roll the dice on, or just that I want in my locker room, I think that he's, if he's your third tight end, he comes in and he's, battling Jared Wiley for a spot. Y'all are all looking it up right now. I can see Garrett's over here watching. I just.
Jolly's he's one of those really good Swiss Army knife type guys. If you want him as a traditional tight end, that's not his bag. But like I said, if you want to try to mold him into the fullback, H-back, special teams demon type player, now we're talking that's more his mold.
Yeah, if you let him be a move tight end, again, he can be your third guy, a guy you motion around. But I just think what he brings as a person to your locker room, and I use that as an example. His teammates are about him. It's it's just lots of positives about his character and about his effort. So you're
saying use him like Kyle Juszczyk?
There's another tight end I'm thinking of. Not quite Juszczyk.
Connor Hayward.
No, let me think about it. Let me chew on it. Gosh, it's driving me crazy.
He kind of gives me shades of former Dallas Clark type. Like a smaller
Johnny Smith. Oh,
yeah,
the Steelers were playing at running back last year. Yeah, it's very interesting career arc. Let's keep moving with the prospects as we progress through the episode here. Also, I kind of want to, as a side note, as a side cursor for especially relating to the Chiefs. If you look at what the Chiefs would kind of use a tight end, especially if you're talking just like a third string, fourth string tight end. We look back a couple years ago, Andy Reid really liked using 14 personnel for a little bit. That was kind of his newfound love for a couple of games there, and he was using guys. I think the package was Kelsey, Gray, Jared Wiley, and Jody Fortson as most of those packages. Guys that are gonna be your third string guy that you're going to use only really in 13 or 14 personnel. I don't know if you're necessarily looking for a guy that's more undersized like Jolie or Trigg, who's, you can kind of make him more of a gadget. I feel like if what Andy Reid would use a 13 or 14 personnel tight end for, you want a little more size and a blocking prowess to him. At least in my opinion. I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like that's, if you're looking at late round tight end prospects that the Chiefs would likely draft, I would lean more towards the bigger guys. And there's a couple guys here that I can come up with as in this next group. Eli Raridan out of Notre Dame, Joe Royer out of Cincinnati, and Marlon Klein out of Michigan. That's Michigan? Yeah, it's Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
It's Michigan.
3 guys who are 6'6", or 6'5" and like 250, 255-ish, like a little bit bigger guys that I feel like you can utilize more in those roles. So what are our opinions on this next group of guys? I know Joy Royer gives a lot of people shades of another former Cincinnati Bearcat, Travis Kelce. That's always a good comparison. And then also Martin Klein, Michigan. They just seem to churn out tight ends. I don't know if it seems like they have a good lineage of tight ends and stuff like that. So, what are our thoughts, Randy? I'll let you go first. What are your thoughts?
Let's see. Out of the three, I don't want to steal too much of Kyle's thunder with his Golden Domer, but out of the three, Raritan's probably my favorite. He's that prototypical tight end. You know, the 6'7", 250 pounds. He can block. He's a solid blocker. I think he's a better receiver than Notre Dame allowed him to be. He still had 32 catches on the year. No touchdowns, unfortunately. You figure a guy at 6'7", you might look for him in the red zone every once in a while.
A lot of QB run in the red zone. A lot of Jeremiah Love and some QB run option work.
Right. But these guys, these three are very similar in body type and skill set. So it's kind of like the rest of this tight end class. It's like they are all at this point day three guys that offer, some are a little bit better blockers, some are a little bit better receivers. Are they any of them going to blow the doors off your anything? No. But they're going to be solid. But yeah, I think out of the three, Raritan's probably my favorite. Royer broke Travis's receiving record at Cincinnati for a tight end for catches in a year with 50, or in a single season with 50. But Klein was probably the least productive out of all of them, but showed some upside when he did get some opportunities. So. They're all late round guys that can carve out a niche as like a third tight end, and maybe work their way into something. But yeah, they're all day three guys at this point. So it's just kind of which flavor do you really like?
Kyle, talk about the Irishman for me. I don't know if he's actually Irish, but he did go. He is a fighting Irish, I should say.
So he was the number one. He was the highest rated tight end prospect since like 2018 when he came in. His biggest problem and the reason that he's farther down on draft boards than I think he likely would be is he blew his ACL out twice in a row, senior year of high school, freshman year of college, literally back to back, same knee. Had to have that reconstructed. Then we went through. He suffered a little from, as Randy pointed out, from some issues at the quarterback position at Notre Dame for a couple of years until they figured out that the transfer portal was an option. And then recruited Lloyd Carr's grandson to play quarterback now. So he's got the highest ceiling of all three of these guys, I think. I do like Royer. I do not like Klein. Not a lot of rep. I was not impressed with Klein. I was not impressed with Klein watching him play for Michigan, just watching broadcast of it. When I watched him play this year, I was not a big fan when I went back and watched him a few days ago. But Raritan, the only problem I have with his blocking is because he's so big, he doesn't always get low enough, and sometimes some smaller guys can get up underneath him. He can... There's a lot of room to grow in the passing game, and I think he's got all the tools you need for it. As Randy mentioned, he's plenty big enough, but he didn't really get a whole lot of action in doing it at Notre Dame, so there's plenty of room to work with. But if you get to sit and learn from Travis, I think he's got a higher ceiling than tight end 3 long term. Anyway, I think with some learning, and if that knee holds up, but again, the knee is the big medical question. That's a Rick Burkholder conversation. What does Mr. Rick think? If they think that, then I think you can probably get him in the later portions of the day 3 because teams are going to be skeptical and apprehensive about that knee. But he did play plenty after the knee surgeries and wasn't really an injury problem afterwards. So I like Eli a lot. I think he kind of had a rougher career at Notre Dame than anyone thought he was going to. And if you're going to talk about tight end factories and you say Michigan while Notre Dame is in the conversation, I might have a stroke.
Yeah.
From an NFL tight ends perspective, Notre Dame has had a litany of them over the last 2 decades plus. So.
Interesting. Very interesting. Tom, what do you think?
I'm with these guys. I think Eli Reardon's probably the top guy in that list for me. I like Klein's potential. Eli Reardon. I like Eli Reardon most. Marlon Klein is allegedly an athletic freak, but that just doesn't show up. And it feels like he's a guy who there's just a lot of potential. At some point, it has to be a thing. Joe Royer, if he's round 6, round 7, I'm a little bit less high on him. He did nothing for 3 years at Ohio, Ohio State, and then he was good at Cincinnati, but they had a lot of, I don't know. I'm just not as impressed with Joe Royer. But I do like Reardon. I think, like Kyle said, the ACL stuff just kind of hurt his trajectory, but we started to see flashes of that as things went on.
He was much better this year than he was than the 2 previous years. He was better with Riley Leonard, and then he was excellent with CJ this year. And I say excellent. Everybody thinks about Notre Dame and tight ends, and they put a lot of them out. They also don't usually put up gaudy numbers because the running game is always such an option at Notre Dame that the tight ends kind of get squeezed on the numbers, but they are usually elite run blockers because they do it all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm in line with you guys on where we fall with those guys.
Okay, so that's about 10 guys so far. We're about an hour into this. Do we have any other guys that we want to bring up?
I got one, and I think he's steadily climbed up my rankings up to number 7 at the moment, and could potentially even get maybe just a little bit higher. He could maybe squeeze in past Mr. Jolly here at 6, but Tanner Kozel from Houston right now.
Yep.
He's fun to watch. He's 6'7", little on the lighter side at 240 at 6'7", but he's a red zone monster. Last year at Houston, he had 65 catches for 651 and 5. But prior to that, he spent some time at Ball State, in which his last season at Ball State, he caught 94 balls for over 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. And I think one of my favorite things this year was watching Cole Payton throw a beautiful back shoulder ball to him at the Senior Bowl practice. That was just a thing of beauty to me. So watching my former NDSU guy throw a ball to this kid was fun during that Senior Bowl. But he showed out at the Senior Bowl as well. And some people were talking about the competition at Ball State and Houston isn't whatever. Players are going to play wherever they go, and he showed that he can play against those guys at the Senior Bowl. But he's a lot of fun to watch. Does need to work on the blocking because even at 6'7", some guys can get underneath him a little bit, and he's not the stoutest in the run game. But if you're looking for a number 2 tight end or even a number 3 to come in the red zone and cause some mismatch problems and be able to go up and get a ball, go find Mr. Kozel. He's fun to watch.
Very nice.
I'm glad Randy mentioned Tanner because I really enjoy watching him. I think he's going to be solid in this league. I'll give you if they want to take a flyer or maybe a guy you sign as a UDFA if he doesn't end up getting drafted at the end of the 7th round. Mr. Gillenborg, the kid out of Wyoming. He's only played football, I think, for like 3 years or something like that. He's very raw, but he's an athlete and he's got a lot of upside. Let him get in a room and learn. Maybe ends up on your practice squad for this year or the year after. For only playing football for 3 years, he's pretty fun to watch. I threw it on as kind of like a, oh, haha, let's see what this kid is. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, I can see it. He's got stuff to work on for sure, but I can see it.
Yeah, he went down this year early in the season with an injury. I don't remember exactly what it was, though.
I don't remember what the injury was. He did go down earlier this year, but yeah, it was. He's a complete and total project. I'm not telling you that's a refined product in the slightest, but.
Yeah.
Like I said, sometimes you can just look at a guy and be like, "Well, I can see it. I know it's not there yet, but you can see where it could. Where if he continues to develop, it's there." And like I said, he's only played the sport for like 3 years, so.
Right.
Ole Miss tight end Daquan Wright is a guy that I don't know. It's just one of those strange. I watch him and I go, you know what? I like the way this kid plays. He was asked to do a lot of like big time blocking assignments for Ole Miss. I mean, he was solo out there with defensive ends, and again, for him, it was like the process wasn't always pretty, but the end result, like he held up. But also, I think he like when the ball did make it to him, like he just had more juice than I anticipated as a ball carrier. He's just a big man moving. And it's like just a lot of fun. I think if you're looking at a day 3 guy, again, talking about that third, fourth tight end, big personnel, end zone guy, and he's not really the tallest receiver. He's 6'4". He's just more compact than some of the other guys on this list. But I really appreciate what he could be as a blocker, and then he does give me like he's not just that blocker. He gives me a little bit of juice as a ball carrier. If you're gonna do.
Watching him, and I was like, you know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of like Mo Alley Cox.
Yeah.
Like he's a solid blocker. He shows up every once in a while in the passing game, can be a mismatch here and there, but like that's what I see when I watch him play.
And Tom, you're right about the weird ways they used him, because Lane Kiffin in that offense, they did odd stuff at Ole Miss, and he was asked to do a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I just love the way when he has the ball, he just gets like he's just so north south, and it's just like this big like head of steam, and you're just watching guys in the secondary go, "Holy shit, I'm supposed to tackle this thing!" Like he just starts barreling forward. It's just fun to watch. So yeah, that's my day 3 guy.
Did we talk about Dallin Bentley at all?
Nope.
No.
He's another one of your thicker, bigger tight ends. He's smooth for as big as he is. I don't know where the ceiling lies, but he's pretty smooth for a big boy in the receiving game.
This whole tight end class, just as we've watched, this is a handsome looking tight end class. Some of these headshots, I'm like, dang, like you were looking.
We got good lettuce on them. Yeah. All right. Well, I think it kind of covers it. I think we've knocked it out. I think we got it done in a relatively, about an hour, a little over an hour we meant. So I think we did good. If the Chiefs are going to invest in tight end, I think we covered anyone that they might have done, barring any UDFAs and stuff like that. We didn't talk about the BYU kid, but there is a BYU tight end in this draft. Just you always got to remember. Always got to remember. So with that, that's everything we've got for you. Thank you all for tuning in and rocking with us. We will be back next week for more position groups. We've still got a couple more position groups to go. We only got a couple more weeks to the draft. We still got to talk about O-line, edge, defensive tackle, corner, safety.
We got some dudes,
punters, long snappers, all the fun stuff left. So I know Kyle's excited for that long snapper episode, right, Kyle?
Yeah, we got a lot. I mean,
long snapper.
No, we're not. And
Kyle tried to talk himself into it for a second. He's like, no.
James, if you want to long snap until you're about 55 and just show up on, that's fine with me, boss. And you can stop running downfield to tackle people too, so you don't get hurt as you get older.
Yeah.
Take it easy, big dog.
We got a lot more fun stuff in store for you guys before the draft, and obviously after all these prospect evals, we also got mock draft warfare. So that's also a fun thing coming up. So yeah, that's it. We'll be back next week. Be sure to follow us at Kingdom Says Pod, Facebook, X, and Instagram. Check us out, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts at. We will be on there, and we will see you guys in the next episode of the Kingdom Says.